Kirsten back. Hi everyone, it's KJ and her 3. This is video number 5. And this one is the third out of a series on birth order. So I did a video on the oldest, on the middle, and now I'm saving the best for last, which is the youngest. Now I am partial, of course, because I am the youngest out of 2. My husband is the youngest out of 3. So I joke about it, but yeah, so this one is about the baby of the family. And also, my youngest, Sasha, I've introduced her in other videos. She will be 1 very soon, actually in a couple of days. Probably when this comes out, she already would have turned 1. Her birthday's on August the 20th. So a lot of this is on the characteristics of the youngest child. I will say, as I've said before, her personality is yet to really be seen, but I can already see some of these traits, so I'm going to focus on what typically shows up in the youngest child and what shows up in me, what has shown up in my husband and other babies of the family. So they are often very creative, they're confident, they are outgoing, they're energetic, they like to be the center of attention. And interestingly, they get away with a lot of things. They're used to getting away with things that their older siblings do not get away of or get away with. One of the reasons is because, you know, the parents have already been hypervigilant with the first 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, however many. By the time you get to the youngest, you kind of let them do their own thing. You let the siblings take care of them some. It's a little more of a laissez-faire attitude towards parenting at that point. So, you know, you're kind of used to fending for yourselves. You're used to getting hand-me-downs. You're used to certainly not being the first to do anything. And you're also used to getting a lot of attention. A lot of youngest children are spoiled. That is not just a myth or a stereotype. I believe it to be true. So being the youngest child, probably you've heard before. I know I have been guilty of saying, you know, they're just young, to my older 1 or 1s. They will learn, but you're older, so you know how to do better. So we just need to let them be okay. They'll be fine, and we're just gonna let them do their own thing, and they'll learn. So they don't get as much discipline as the older ones typically do, because they're just often considered more mature and not ready yet. So what happens? A lot of times they stay immature for quite a while. I know for me, I wasn't the most mature. It took me a while to grow up. I enjoyed being the youngest. I was the youngest in my class a lot of times, youngest in the family. So I kind of reveled in that. And when I wasn't the youngest, I pouted about it. And which is another thing, we youngest children pout a lot. My husband is the youngest, but he's also, I think it's 8 years removed from his sister. So he kind of has an only child syndrome too, which I can do a video on only children. Even though I'm not one, I don't have any. I know of only children, and there's also, of course, certain characteristics with them. So youngest children are charming. They're usually the most charming out of the bunch, usually the most outgoing too. The oldest children, I would say, are very confident, but youngest children are confident in a way that they know that they can get away with things and get their own way. They're just used to it. They're used to people wanting to give them what they want, whereas oldest children have to kind of carve their own way, so they're capable, they feel good about their own abilities. Youngest children just feel good about who they are and the status they have, and so they get away with things. Middle children, unfortunately, don't have that, but they do find ways to stand out, as I mentioned in the last video. So again, Sasha, we don't know what she's going to show up as. I have a hunch, though. A lot of these youngest children characteristics are gonna show up in her as well. Just because you can't help it as parents, these are part of parenting. When you have a youngest child, there are certain things that are going to happen differently. And again, the firsts are not going to occur with the youngest child, more than likely. That is not typical. And so they get used to doing these last. And so they just have fun with it. And they're just more, I would say, easygoing and relaxed as they navigate through life. Oldest children, maybe a little more disciplined and rigid. Middle children either are the people pleasers of the bunch or do things to be the rebel in the family to stand out. Youngest children just are easygoing about what their position is. So they neither have to stand up, because they already do, because they're the youngest, and they don't have to be extra disciplined because they're not the first to do anything. Is there a preference in oldest, middle, or younger? You know, I wouldn't say. The politically correct answer is no, but they have done studies, and most parents are not going to admit to have a favorite. But if the parents that do admit to having a favorite will say that the youngest child is the favorite. Why? Just because they're considered the baby. And babies are considered cute and charming, and they can't do any real harm, and you know, they don't know any better, and so yeah, that I would say the youngest child may have the easiest path, but does that make them prepared for life? Not necessarily. I would say the oldest child is definitely the most prepared for the real world after you get out of your home and family of origin. Middle child is probably, depending on, again, if they're people pleasers or the rebels, they're probably not nearly as prepared. And the youngest children, probably the least prepared, just because they have not had to find their own way. And that some of them find when they go out in the real world, their charm doesn't work. Being the youngest, no one cares about that, because there's a lot of youngest children out there in the world. And so you're not going to be able to get away with things because you smile or pout or ask really nicely or affectionate or any of the stuff that we tend to do to get our own way. And what we've found, we can be a bit manipulative as well. So we'll see how Sasha forms and how she turns out. But that is a lot of the traits of the youngest child. You do discipline a little bit differently based on what kind of child you have and what birth order they fall in. And I do get to be careful, and my husband as well. We just have to be cognizant of the fact that we cannot let our youngest, or youngest two, actually get away with things because they are younger. There's always that, you know, okay, well, they are at fault here, so I'm not going to put the brunt of it on the oldest shoulders because he already has a lot on his plate. I'm not going to put more pressure on him to be perfect and succeed when the youngest don't have that kind of pressure. So it's a constant balance that you get to find, and to find the harmony to exist between all three. So I think I will do a short video on only children, just what I know of them. But this is what I know of the youngest, aka the baby of the family. Of course, as always, if you have not already, like and subscribe, comment, ask questions. Take care. Love ya.